Hey everyone, welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today on the new paradigm.
Yeah, this book
I
has
got
been making
book
some waves.
making waves, and it really takes a look at how the media landscape is shifting and what
Hmm.
that means for men, particularly when it comes to relationships and
Yeah,
family dynamics.
it's a no-nonsense book.
You guys are interested in this, these
Yeah,
covert contracts and societal shifts, so
for sure.
this is going to be right up your alley. The author, he calls it a practical roadmap for navigating this new world.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the book jumps right into something I think a lot of your listeners are familiar with, the declining trust in traditional media. It argues that events like the Iraq War and the 2016 U.S. election
Oh, yeah.
and how they were covered, it really eroded people's faith in those institutions.
Like that curtain was pulled back and everybody saw the wizard before
Exactly.
what it was.
Exactly. And the new paradigm points out that this void hasn't stayed empty. It's been filled by this surge in community-driven platforms. So you think Reddit, independent podcasts, Substack newsletters, it's a whole new ballgame.
It's so interesting because on the one hand, it's like
Yeah.
ultra democratic,
Yeah.
everybody has a voice.
Everybody's got a voice.
But then on the other hand, it's like,
Yeah.
who do you trust?
It's the Wild West. It's like a potluck dinner.
Oh.
The author uses this analogy.
Okay.
Anyone can bring a dish,
Yeah.
which is awesome, but you don't know who washed their hands.
Oh, God, that's a little disturbing.
Yeah, you don't know what ingredients they use. You don't know if they even know how to cook.
Yeah. So how do we navigate this new media landscape where everybody's a publisher?
Well, that's where the new paradigm stresses that you have to become a critical thinker, a savvy consumer of information. It's not enough to just passively absorb what's coming at you. You have to develop that internal BS detector.
So you're saying fact-checking websites like Snopes,
Yes. Yeah.
PolitiFact, that becomes an essential tool.
Absolutely. But even those fact-checking sites
Right.
have their own biases.
Right.
It's like, think of it this way. If you're trying to get the real story about, I don't know, a contentious political issue,
Yeah.
would you only talk to one side?
No. You need multiple perspectives to
There's
really
multiple perspectives.
get the full picture.
And the new paradigm says this is even more important now
Okay.
with today's media landscape because algorithms are designed to keep us in these echo chambers.
So we all just end up in our own little bubbles online
Yes.
where everyone agrees with us and any opposing viewpoint is just totally filtered out.
That's
Uh,
actually
That's the danger.
kind of scary.
It is. And that's why the new paradigm pushes the reader to actively seek out diverse perspectives,
Okay.
to engage in dialogue,
Yeah.
even when it's uncomfortable.
So you're saying we need to become more media literate,
Exactly.
not just in terms of what we're consuming,
Yes.
but understanding the forces that are shaping what we're seeing. 100%. And that's where the book digs into the psychology of media consumption, and specifically how cognitive biases can really warp our perception of what's true.
So let's unpack this. What are cognitive biases?
Okay, so
I've heard this term, but I need a refresher.
cognitive biases, they're basically mental shortcuts our brain uses to process information quickly. The problem is these shortcuts can lead to flawed thinking.
Okay.
The new paradigm highlights a few of them that are really relevant here.
Like confirmation bias,
Oh, yeah.
where we tend to
Yes.
seek out
And-
information that
yeah.
already confirms what we think, even if it's not accurate.
That's right.
I'm definitely guilty of that.
I think we all are. It's a very human tendency to do. But the book argues that in the age of hyperpartisan media, this can be supercharged.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And it can lead us down these rabbit holes.
Yeah.
And it's not just confirmation bias. There's also the availability heuristic.
Okay, that one sounds a little more technical.
Okay, so imagine this.
Yeah.
You watch a news report about a plane crash. Okay.
Suddenly, you're convinced that flying is incredibly dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
Even though statistically it's much safer than driving.
Right.
That's the availability heuristic at work.
Okay.
Our brains latch onto this vivid, memorable information,
Got it.
even if it distorts our perception of the actual risk.
So a steady diet of negative news can actually make us more anxious and fearful.
Yes.
Even if the world isn't actually getting worse.
That's right. And that's why
That's messed up.
it is. That's why the new paradigm says it's so important to be aware of these biases, to
Okay.
understand how they can influence our thinking and develop strategies to counteract them.
So it's not just about consuming the right information.
Right.
It's about learning to think critically about all information.
100%. And the book gets into some really fascinating strategies for doing that.
Okay.
But before we get there, I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
The way algorithms can shape what we see online.
Yeah. The echo chamber thing, that's a rabbit hole I feel like I could get lost in. Oh, it is a rabbit hole and it's getting deeper.
Yeah.
Think about how you consume information online. Your social media feeds,
Mm-hmm.
the news websites you visit, even the YouTube videos you watch.
Right. Yeah.
All of that is being filtered and curated by algorithms.
As those algorithms are like invisible gatekeepers.
They are. They're the gatekeepers. They're incredibly sophisticated. They learn our preferences, our habits, our emotions, and they use that information to feed us more of what they think we want.
Which in theory could be really helpful, right?
It could be.
If it helps us find information
Yes.
that's relevant to us.
Yeah.
But it also seems like it could be dangerous if it's preventing us from seeing other perspectives.
That's the problem. These algorithms are designed to keep us engaged, to
Yeah.
keep us clicking, keep us scrolling.
Right.
And one of the ways they do that is by creating these echo chambers
Yeah.
where we only see information that confirms our existing beliefs.
So how do we break out of these echo chambers? How do we make sure we're getting a balanced diet of information?
The new paradigm offers a few strategies. One is to be more intentional about the sources we choose,
Okay.
instead of passively scrolling through social media.
So I need to actively seek out diverse viewpoints.
Actively seek them out. It's about challenging our own assumptions, seeking out those opposing perspectives, being willing to engage in dialogue even when it's uncomfortable.
So we need to become more proactive
Yes.
consumers of information.
Yes.
Not just passive recipients.
Exactly. And the book argues that this is especially important for men today
Okay.
as we navigate a media landscape that often portrays masculinity in a negative light.
Okay, this is something I'm really interested in. So we've talked about the decline of trust
Mm-hmm.
in traditional media, the rise of these new platforms.
Yeah.
But how does all this relate to the way men are being portrayed?
The new paradigm argues that these shifts have coincided with and maybe even contributed to a broader cultural shift that's demonized traditional masculinity.
So it's not just about the content itself. It's
Yeah.
about the underlying message.
It's about the underlying message. The book argues that men are often portrayed as bumbling idiots, incompetent fathers, or even dangerous aggressors.
I see these tropes all the time.
You see them everywhere.
But I guess I haven't thought about like the cumulative effect.
The cumulative effect is the insidious part.
Yeah.
These messages repeated over and over again chip away at men's self-esteem and create this sense of shame and inadequacy.
And that's something that men are already struggling with.
They are. With all the societal changes, the shifting gender roles, it's hard to know where we fit in anymore.
Totally.
And that's exactly what the new paradigm drives home.
Okay.
It argues that these negative portrayals of masculinity are creating a generation of men who are afraid to be assertive, afraid to take risks, afraid to be themselves.
So it's not just about feeling bad about ourselves.
Yeah.
It's like a fundamental shift in how men see themselves in the world.
It is. And that has profound implications for relationships, families, and society as a whole.
Okay, we're getting into some deep territory here.
We are.
But before we dive into those implications, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier
Yeah.
about how technology has not only changed the way we consume information, but also the nature of journalism itself.
Absolutely. It's not just newspapers and evening news broadcasts anymore.
Right.
It's a 247 news cycle,
Right.
social media feeds, podcasts, YouTube channels.
It's like a constant barrage.
It is a constant barrage of information coming at us from all directions.
And it feels like anybody with a smartphone and an internet connection
Mm-hmm.
can be a journalist now.
And that's a key point that the new paradigm makes. It argues that technology has, on one hand, democratized access to information.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
We can create our own news feeds,
You bet.
seek out these niche interests,
Mm.
connect with people across the globe.
Exactly. But on the flip side,
Yeah.
this democratization has created a lot of noise, a lot of misinformation,
Right.
a lot of competition for our attention.
It's like that saying, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing.
It is.
We have access to more information than ever.
Yes.
But it's harder than ever to know what to trust.
Exactly. And the new paradigm argues this is where critical thinking
Okay.
becomes absolutely essential. You can't just passively absorb everything you see and hear.
Right.
You have to question those sources, look for evidence, be willing to change your mind when you're presented with new information.
So it's not just about consuming the right information. It's about developing these critical thinking skills
Yes.
that allow us to filter out the noise and get to the truth.
100%. And those critical thinking skills are even more important when it comes to understanding how gender is portrayed in the media.
Okay.
Because those portrayals aren't always accurate.
Right.
And they can have a huge impact on how we view ourselves and each other.
All right. I'm ready to go deeper on this. Let's talk about those gender portrayals.
Okay.
Where does the new paradigm take us next?
Well, the book argues that the media often perpetuates stereotypes.
Okay.
That can be incredibly damaging to both men and women. For men, we see that toxic masculinity narrative played out again and again.
So it's like we're being told that to be a good man,
Mm-hmm.
you have to suppress your masculinity.
Exactly. But the new paradigm pushes back against that,
Okay.
arguing that those traditional masculine virtues
Okay.
are actually essential for a healthy society.
Mm-hmm.
They're not toxic. They're necessary for building strong communities, protecting the vulnerable, solving problems.
And it's not about saying that women can't embody those virtues too.
Right.
It's about recognizing that they are traditionally associated with masculinity, and suppressing them in men creates this imbalance.
You got it. It's about recognizing the unique strengths and contributions of both genders, not pitting them against each other.
And the book argues that these portrayals can impact relationships.
Yes.
Especially the dynamics between men and women.
It does. Yeah. We're bombarded with these images of men as these stoic, unemotional beings who are only interested in sex and power, while women are portrayed as overly emotional and manipulative.
Which I imagine can create a lot of tension and misunderstanding.
A lot of tension.
Because it just reinforces those negative stereotypes.
It does.
It makes it hard to connect on a deeper level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The new paradigm says this is a recipe for relationship disaster.
Yeah.
We need to understand that men and women communicate differently.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Right.
It's about appreciating those differences, not using them as weapons against each other.
So effective communication becomes even more important.
Yes.
In this media landscape where we're constantly being bombarded with all these conflicting messages about gender and relationships.
Absolutely. And the book suggests that one way to improve communication is to step back from the constant barrage of media messages and reconnect with our core values.
To remember who we are and what we stand for without all the noise.
Exactly. That's the foundation for building healthy relationships.
Yeah.
For understanding ourselves and for navigating this new world with confidence and integrity.
This has been eye-opening already, and we've only just scratched the surface.
I know, right?
I'm eager to see where this deep dive takes us next.
Well, I think you'll find the next part really relevant as it looks at how these portrayals impact family structures and the roles we play within them. One of the things the new paradigm really gets into is the portrayal of traditional family structures in the media. And it doesn't shy away from controversy.
This is where things can get a little heated. I know there's a lot of different opinions on what a family should look like these days.
Right. And the book takes a pretty strong stance.
Okay.
It argues that the traditional nuclear family, a mother, father, and their children, is the ideal structure for raising kids who are well-adjusted and successful.
Which might feel a little old-fashioned in today's world.
Yeah.
You know, divorce is common. There's so many different types of family structures out there.
Totally. And the book acknowledges those changes.
Okay.
But argues that the nuclear family provides a sense of stability and continuity that's essential for children's development. It's about having those clear roles and responsibilities, knowing where you belong, having that rock-solid foundation to build on.
But what about families that don't fit that mold?
Yeah.
Does the book address those situations?
It does, and this is where things get really interesting.
Right.
The author argues that while alternative family structures might work for some, they don't provide the same level of stability and support for children. He actually dives into some studies that suggest kids raised in nuclear families tend to have better outcomes in terms of education, behavior, even mental health.
So it's like he's saying there's something inherently beneficial about that traditional structure, regardless of individual circumstances.
Yes. And the book doesn't just focus on the kids. It also dives into the impact of these shifting family dynamics on men.
Okay, I'm really curious about this. What's the connection?
The new paradigm argues that the decline of the traditional family structure has coincided with a decline in male leadership in the home.
So with fathers less likely to be the primary breadwinner or disciplinarian, their role becomes less defined.
Less defined. And the book suggests that this can lead to a lot of confusion, frustration, and even resentment among men. It's like they're being told they're not needed, that their role is no longer valued.
That makes sense. It's like a fundamental shift in the power dynamic within the family.
And the book argues that this shift hasn't been entirely beneficial.
Okay.
It's led to a situation where men are often unsure of their place
Yeah.
in the family and where women are often overburdened with responsibilities.
So it's not about saying that women should go back to being housewives or anything like that. It's about recognizing that these changes...
It's had these unintended consequences for both men and women.
The new paradigm is not about turning back the clock.
Right.
It's about finding a new balance,
Okay.
a way to honor those traditional roles
Yeah.
while also acknowledging the realities of modern life.
So how do we do that?
Yeah, how do we find that balance?
Yeah.
Well, the book emphasizes the importance of communication,
Okay.
of having those open and honest conversations about expectations,
Mm-hmm.
roles, responsibilities within the family.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that both partners need to feel valued,
Okay.
respected, and supported.
And that communication needs to happen early on.
Yes,
Right.
early and often.
Before those resentments build up and create bigger problems.
The new paradigm encourages couples to have those tough conversations,
Okay.
to define those roles within the relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and create that shared vision for their family.
And it's not just about communication between partners.
No.
The book also stresses the importance of fathers.
Being actively involved in their
Yes.
children's lives.
Absolutely.
So it's not enough to just be the fun dad
Right.
who shows up for the occasional outing.
No, you got to be present.
It's about being a consistent, reliable presence
Yes.
who's actively involved in the day-to-day
100%.
responsibilities of raising kids.
Exactly. The book argues that fathers provide a unique type of guidance and support that's essential for children's development, especially for boys.
Yeah.
It's about being that role model, that protector, that source of strength and stability.
And that's a role that's often undermined in the media.
It is. We're bombarded with those images of bumbling dads,
Right.
absent fathers,
Yeah.
which can make it even harder for men to step into that role
Right.
with confidence.
Yeah.
That's another key point that the book makes.
Okay.
It challenges those negative portrayals of fathers and argues that we need to start celebrating the importance of fatherhood,
Okay.
both for the children and for society as a whole.
Because strong fathers create strong families,
Yes.
which in turn creates strong communities.
Yeah.
It's like a ripple effect.
This is a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Now, the new paradigm doesn't just talk about
Okay.
the ideal family structure and the importance of fatherhood. It also tackles a topic that's particularly sensitive, the so-called war on boys.
This is where things can get a little controversial.
Yeah.
I know this is a topic that people have strong opinions about.
The new paradigm doesn't shy away from it.
Okay.
It argues that societal changes, educational systems, and media portrayals have created an environment that often disadvantages boys.
So it's like boys are being set up for failure and then blamed for not succeeding.
That's one way to look at it. The book highlights the feminization of education
Okay.
with its emphasis on collaboration and emotional intelligence
Wow.
as one example. It argues that this approach often leaves boys behind,
Okay.
as they tend to thrive in more structured environments with clear rules and expectations.
Which can lead to boys feeling disengaged, frustrated,
Yeah.
and ultimately less successful in school.
Exactly. And the book points out that this isn't because boys are inherently less intelligent.
Right.
It's about a mismatch between their learning styles
Okay.
and the dominant educational approach.
So it's not about saying one approach is better.
Right.
It's about recognizing that boys and girls might learn differently
Exactly.
and benefit from different teaching methods.
100%. And the book argues that this difference in learning styles isn't just limited to the classroom.
Right.
It extends to the way boys and men are often portrayed in the media.
We talked about those negative stereotypes.
Yes.
You know, the bumbling dad, the incompetent husband, the emotionally stunted
All of them.
male character.
Yeah. And the new paradigm argues that these portrayals contribute to this sense.
Yeah.
That masculinity itself is something to be ashamed of. It's like boys are being told that their natural instincts and desires are wrong, that they need to suppress who they are to be accepted.
Which can have a really devastating impact.
And their
self-esteem, their relationships, their overall well-being.
Absolutely. And the book argues that this war on boys has real-world consequences, leading to lower academic achievement among boys, higher rates of depression and suicide, and a general sense of confusion and alienation among young men.
So it's not just a theoretical debate.
No,
It's something that's impacting real lives
it is.
in a very tangible way.
And the new paradigm offers some solutions, some strategies for counteracting these negative trends and empowering boys to embrace their masculinity in a healthy and positive way.
I'm really interested to hear more about these solutions, but
Yeah.
before we get into that,
Yeah.
I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
This idea that the media often portrays women in ways
Yes.
that are actually harmful to both men and women.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to explore that further.
That's a really important point that often gets overlooked. The new paradigm argues that the media's portrayal of women can be just as damaging
Okay.
as its portrayal of men, albeit in different ways.
Like how? What kind of portrayals are we talking about?
Well, one example is the portrayal of women as hypercompetent, successful, and independent,
Okay.
to the point where it creates these unrealistic expectations for
Right.
both men and women.
It's like we're setting women up to be super women,
Yes.
able to do it all without breaking a sweat,
Exactly.
which, let's be honest, is impossible.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
And the new paradigm argues that this can be incredibly damaging to women's self-esteem as they
Yeah.
constantly feel like they're falling short
Right.
of these impossible standards.
It's like we're telling women they have to be perfect.
Yes.
To be worthy of love and respect.
That's right.
And that's a lot of pressure to put on anyone.
It is a lot of pressure. And his book also points out that these portrayals can be harmful to men as well,
Okay.
as they create a sense of inadequacy and competition.
Because if women are always portrayed as being so amazing,
Right.
where does that leave men?
Exactly.
It's like we're constantly being compared to these
Yes.
idealized versions of women, and we're always coming up short.
And that can create a lot of anxiety, resentment,
Yeah.
even anger.
Right. It's like
Yeah.
we're being told that we're not good enough,
Yes.
that we'll never measure up
Exactly.
to these unrealistic standards.
Exactly.
So it's not about tearing down successful women or anything. It's
Yeah.
about recognizing that these portrayals are often unrealistic and harmful to both genders.
Yes.
It's about creating a more balanced
Yes.
and nuanced view of women in the media,
100%.
one that acknowledges their strengths and their
Yeah.
vulnerabilities, their ambitions, and their desires.
Exactly. It's about portraying women as human beings, not as superheroes or villains.
Right.
And it's about recognizing that men and women are different, but
Yeah.
equally valuable, and that we need each other
Right.
to create a healthy and thriving society.
So how do we challenge these harmful portrayals? What can we do to create a more balanced and realistic media landscape?
The new paradigm suggests that we need to become more critical consumers of media.
Okay.
We need to be aware of the messages that are being presented to us,
Yeah.
to question those messages,
Ah.
and to seek out alternative perspectives.
So it's not about boycotting the media altogether.
Right.
It's about being more discerning about what we consume
Yeah.
and how we interpret it.
100%. And the book offers some practical strategies for doing just that.
Okay. I'm all ears. What
Yeah.
kind of strategies?
Well, one of the most important things, according to the new paradigm,
Yes.
is to limit our exposure to media that perpetuates negative stereotypes.
So turning off the TV, putting down the phone,
Not necessarily.
stepping away from the computer screen.
It's more about being selective
Okay.
about what we watch, read, and listen to. If a particular show, movie, or news outlet consistently portrays men or women in a negative light,
Okay.
we can choose to stop consuming that content.
It's about voting with our wallets
Yes.
and our attention,
You got it.
supporting media that aligns with our values,
Yes,
and boycotting media that doesn't.
absolutely. And another important strategy is to actively challenge those negative messages when we encounter them.
So speaking of writing letters to the editor, engaging in those online discussions,
Yes,
basically using our voices to push back against those harmful narratives.
exactly. It's about being willing to have those uncomfortable conversations, to call out sexism and misogyny when we see it,
Yeah.
and to advocate for a more balanced and realistic portrayal of both genders in the media.
It's about recognizing that we have a voice and that we can use that voice to create positive change.
You got it.
And it's about teaching our kids to do the same.
Absolutely, because the media landscape is constantly evolving,
Right?
and the messages that our children are exposed to are going to shape their understanding of the world.
This is all really insightful stuff, and I'm starting to see how the new paradigm provides a framework for understanding not just the challenges facing men today, but also the solutions.
Right. It's not just a book about complaining about the problems. It's about offering practical strategies for creating a better future.
And one of those strategies, as we've discussed, is to challenge those harmful portrayals of masculinity in the media.
Absolutely.
So it's not enough to just defend ourselves
No.
against those negative portrayals. We need to actively promote
Mm-hmm.
a more positive and balanced view of masculinity.
That's exactly right. The new paradigm argues that those traditional virtues, strength, courage, stoicism, leadership, are not toxic. They're essential for a healthy and thriving society.
Because those are the qualities that inspire men to protect the vulnerable, to
Right.
solve problems, to build businesses, to create art,
Yes.
to push the boundaries of human achievement.
Exactly. And the book suggests that we can reclaim those virtues
Right.
by embracing our natural instincts, by seeking out mentors and role models, and by living our lives with integrity and purpose.
It's about stepping into our full potential as men,
Yes.
not apologizing for who we are.
Absolutely. Now, the book provides some practical tips for how to do this.
Okay.
One of the most important things, according to the new paradigm, is to develop a strong sense of self-discipline.
This is about setting goals, working hard,
Yeah.
and sticking to our commitments, even when it's tough.
Exactly. And the book suggests that we can build self-discipline by setting small, achievable goals, by creating routines and sticking to them,
Okay.
and by surrounding ourselves with people who support our goals.
So it's about taking control of our lives rather than letting our impulses and emotions dictate our actions.
It is.
It's about becoming the men we were meant to be.
Exactly. And another key tip that the new paradigm suggests is to learn how to manage our emotions.
This is a big one, right?
It is.
Because we're often told that men shouldn't show their emotions.
Right.
That we should just suck it up and be a man.
Exactly. And the new paradigm argues that this is incredibly damaging both to men's mental health and their relationships.
Because bottling up our emotions doesn't make them go away.
No, it doesn't.
It just makes them fester and grow stronger.
Right. And the book suggests that men need to find healthy ways to express their emotions, whether it's through exercise, talking to a therapist, journaling, or simply spending time in nature.
It's about recognizing that emotions are a natural part of being human.
Yes.
And that it's okay for men to feel them, to acknowledge them, and to express them in a healthy way.
Absolutely. It's about finding that balance between strength and vulnerability, between stoicism and emotional intelligence.
Exactly. Now, another important tip that the new paradigm suggests is to develop a strong sense of self-worth.
Yes, this is about recognizing our own value, regardless of our achievements, our possessions, or what other people think of us.
It's about recognizing our own strengths, our own talents, and our own unique contributions to the world.
Exactly.
It's about understanding that we are enough, just as we are.
The new paradigm suggests that men can cultivate this sense of self-worth by practicing gratitude, by focusing on their strengths, and by surrounding themselves with people who support and appreciate them. It's about recognizing that we are worthy of love and respect, regardless of our flaws or imperfections.
This is such an important message, especially for men
It is.
who are struggling with self-doubt or who feel like they're not measuring up to society's expectations.
Exactly. And the book provides a roadmap for how to break free from those limiting beliefs and step into our full potential as men.
I'm really starting to see how the new paradigm offers a different perspective on masculinity, one that's both empowering and inspiring.
It's a call to action, an invitation to reclaim those traditional virtues that have been unfairly demonized, and create a world where men can thrive as leaders, protectors, providers, and partners.
Okay, this has been mind-blowing.
It is a good book.
I feel like we've covered so much ground already, but I know there's still more to explore.
There is, and the next part of our deep dive gets even more practical. As we look at the specific strategies that the new paradigm offers for navigating this new world, for protecting ourselves and our families from these harmful messages, and for building a more balanced and fulfilling life.
Okay, I'm ready for that practical stuff.
Yeah.
What specific strategies does the new paradigm offer for navigating this new world and protecting ourselves from those harmful media messages?
Well, the book stresses that awareness is the first step.
Yeah.
You know, we need to recognize that the media isn't always this neutral source of information.
Right.
It often has an agenda, and it can be incredibly manipulative.
Right.
Once we're aware of that,
Okay.
we can start to take back control.
So it's like knowledge is power.
Yeah.
The more we understand about how the media works, the better equipped we are to resist its influence.
Exactly. The new paradigm suggests a few different strategies for doing just that. One is to be more intentional about the media we consume.
So not just passively absorbing
No.
whatever's thrown at us,
Right.
but actively choosing what we watch, read, and listen to.
Think about it like this. You wouldn't eat just anything you find on the street,
No.
right? You'd carefully choose food
Yeah.
that's nourishing and healthy.
Right?
It should be the same with information.
Yeah, I like that.
We need to be more discerning about the media we consume.
So you're saying choose sources that are credible,
Oh,
reliable,
I
unbiased.
did that.
It's like creating a healthy media diet for our minds.
So exactly.
And just like with food,
Yeah,
quality matters more than quantity.
100%. And that might mean being willing to pay for quality journalism rather than relying on those free sources that are
Right.
often funded by advertising or special interests.
It's about investing in our own
It is.
mental health and well-being.
Yes.
And recognizing that the media we consume can have a real impact on our thoughts,
Yes.
feelings, and behaviors.
Absolutely. Now, another strategy that the new paradigm suggests is to actively challenge the negative messages that we encounter in the media.
So not just passively accepting
Yeah.
what we see and hear,
Right.
but actively questioning it, looking for alternative perspectives,
Yes.
forming our own opinions.
The book encourages us to ask questions.
Right.
Who created this message?
Yeah.
What is their agenda?
Right.
What are they trying to sell me?
It's about becoming critical thinkers,
Yes,
not mindless consumers.
exactly. And that critical thinking needs to extend to our online lives as well.
Right. With social media and the internet,
Mm-hmm.
it's so easy to get sucked into those echo chambers
It is.
where we're only exposed to information that confirms our existing beliefs.
Exactly. The new paradigm stresses the importance of seeking out diverse viewpoints,
Okay.
challenging our own assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
and being willing to engage in respectful dialogue,
Yeah.
even when it's uncomfortable.
It's about recognizing that we don't have all the answers
You got it.
and that there's always something new to learn.
There is. And this
Yeah.
applies to everything from our personal relationships
Right.
to our political views to our understanding of the world around us.
So it's not just about protecting ourselves
No.
from harmful media messages. It's about becoming more well-rounded,
Yes,
informed, and open-minded individual.
absolutely. And one of the most powerful ways to do that
Okay.
is to talk to our children about the media.
To have those open and honest conversations with our
Yes.
kids about what they're seeing, hearing, and reading.
Exactly. It's about helping them to develop those critical thinking skills,
Mm.
to question the messages that they're being bombarded with,
Yeah.
and to form their own opinions. We need to empower them to be these discerning consumers of media,
Right.
just like we're striving to be.
And that starts with being good role models ourselves.
It does.
You know, if we're constantly glued to our phones,
Yeah.
mindlessly scrolling through social media, passively absorbing whatever the media throws at us,
Mm-hmm.
our kids are going to pick up on those habits.
They will. We need to show them that it's okay to question authority,
Mhm.
to think for themselves,
Right.
and to form their own opinions.
Yeah.
And we need to create a home environment
Yeah.
where open dialogue and critical thinking are encouraged.
It's about setting the example, both in terms of our own media consumption
Mm-hmm.
and in the way that we engage with our kids
Yes,
about these issues.
exactly. And speaking of setting the example, the new paradigm also dives into the importance of fathers
Okay.
being those positive role models.
We've talked a lot about the challenges
Mhm.
facing fathers in the modern world, but how can we overcome those challenges
Yeah.
and step into that role with confidence and integrity?
The book offers some really practical advice. One of the most important things is to be
Confident.
present,
Okay.
both physically and emotionally.
So putting down the phone, turning off the TV,
Yes.
and actually engaging with our kids, both in those everyday moments
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and in those special occasions.
It's about being there for those bedtime stories.
Yeah.
The homework, help the
Unbelievable.
backyard games, the heart-to-heart conversations. It's about showing our kids that they are our priority, that we value their company and that we're invested in their lives.
And it's not just about being physically present.
No.
It's about being emotionally present as well.
It is. That means being attentive, listening without judgment,
Mhm.
and offering support and encouragement. It's about being a safe space for our kids to share their thoughts and feelings, knowing that they won't be ridiculed or dismissed.
It's about creating that strong emotional bond
Yes.
that allows children to feel secure, loved, and understood.
Absolutely. Now, another important piece of advice that the new paradigm offers
Okay.
is for fathers to be consistent.
So this is about setting clear expectations, following through on our promises,
Yes.
being a reliable presence in our children's lives.
It's about creating that sense of stability and security for our kids, letting them know that they can count on us no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
That consistency builds trust and strengthens those bonds.
And it's not always easy.
It's not always easy.
Life throws curveballs, we get busy, we get stressed.
Mm-hmm.
But being a good father means making that commitment
Yes,
to be there for our kids, even when it's hard.
absolutely. And that brings us to another important quality that the new paradigm emphasizes: patience.
This is a tough one, especially when our kids are testing boundaries and pushing our buttons.
It is. But the book reminds us that our kids are still learning,
Yeah.
they're still growing, and they're going to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
It's about meeting them where they are understanding their developmental stage
Okay.
and responding with empathy and compassion.
It's about remembering that we were all kids once,
Exactly.
and we all made our fair share of mistakes along the way.
We did. And that brings us to another key piece of advice from the new paradigm.
Yep.
Be involved in your children's lives.
This is about showing up right, participating in their activities,
Mm-hmm.
attending their school events,
Yes.
asking about their hobbies,
Yes.
basically demonstrating a genuine interest in what matters to them.
Exactly. It's about being an active participant in their lives,
Right.
not just a passive observer.
Right.
And it's about recognizing that our involvement matters,
Mm-hmm.
that it makes a difference in their development and well-being.
It's about sending that message loud and clear.
Yeah,
You are important to me, and I care about what happens in your life.
100%. And that leads us to the final and perhaps most important piece of advice from the new paradigm.
Okay.
Be a role model.
This is about walking the walk,
It is.
showing our kids what it means to be a good man
Yes.
by being a good man ourselves.
Exactly. It's about living our lives with integrity, treating others with respect, taking responsibility for our actions, pursuing our passions, and making a positive contribution to the world.
It's about being the kind of man that we want our sons to become and our daughters to marry.
Exactly. And that's the ultimate goal of the new paradigm,
Right.
to empower men to become the best versions of themselves, not just for their own benefit, but for the benefit of their families, their communities, and the world around them.
This deep dive has been incredibly thought-provoking.
Good.
It's given me a lot to think about, both in terms of my own life and how I want to raise my children.
I'm glad to hear that. And if you're interested in exploring these ideas further, the new paradigm is available on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
Absolutely. This is a book that every man should read. And until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep striving to become the best version of yourself.